Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we're going to take a look at a Type 1 fencing bayonet. Now, fencing bayonets exist in a wide variety of forms. The idea is to have a pseudo-bayonet that you can use for, well, bayonet drill and practice against a live opponent without actually risking sticking them with a real bayonet. So there are a bunch of different varieties of these that have been made. Some are spring-loaded, some are rubber, some are, all sorts of different solutions. Some are just solid hard wood with some sort of padding at the end. What we have here today is the first one of this sort of fencing bayonet that was adopted and manufactured by the United States military. So the background on this, what inspired this is in 1852, the US adopted a new manual of bayonet exercise. This is generally attributed to General McClellan. In actuality, he translated, or had translated, in 1847 book by a French fencing expert, A.J.J. Pomelier, and that became the basis for the new US fencing manual. And with a manual like that, of course, well, they needed some fencing bayonets to be able to safely practice these new techniques. So they adopted this. Let's take a closer look at it. There is no known year designation of this. They were manufactured in 1852, the fiscal year 1852 to 1853. And the collector's designation for this is a Type 1 fencing bayonet. So the construction is the original socket from a model of 1816 bayonet, like this one. This is an intact 1816 pattern. This went on the US then issue 69 caliber musket. But you cut this off right down here, and then they welded on this box with a thumb screw, so you could put in the blade, so to speak, this guy. This was made of baleen. Now, baleen is often referred to in historical texts as whalebone, specifically without a space. There is whale space bone, and there is whalebone, and whalebone is baleen. This is actually the equivalent of a tooth from a filter-feeding whale. So humpback whales, blue whales, and other krill-eating, filter-feeding whales. They don't have teeth as we think of them. They have this filtering material, we call it baleen, and it has a lot of the characteristics of a modern plastic. So if you were to look at this, a lot of people would say, oh, it's old, it's probably some sort of early bakelite or some sort of early polymer. And it, in fact, is very flexible, and it feels and handles like a modern plastic, but it is actually from a part of a whale's mouth. Anyway, depending on the species and the samples, this can be black or brown or even white in color. They have that as the quote-unquote blade of the bayonet, which makes a lot of sense. It's flexible, easy to work with. And then at the end, they had a leather-covered ball in lieu of a tip. And the inside of this could be several different things. It could be gutta percha, early sort of a rubber material. It could be cork. There were a number of different things that were used. Just the idea is you have a ball end so that you can stab someone with this and it won't penetrate, and then the blade will flex. Now, they manufactured 1,500 of these in fiscal year 1852-53 at Watervliet Arsenal. 1,500 is a huge number. They were sent to West Point Academy, which was not graduating that many officer candidates. I suspect this was either a make-work project or they anticipated breakage of a lot of these blades, and so they made a lot of extra fencing bayonets. But that is a Type 1 fencing bayonet. Today, the sockets for these bayonets remain not that uncommon to find, but complete intact ones with the baleen blade are ridiculously rare. This is one of single digits known to exist. Now, there's no official, there's no confirmation of this story, but the rumor, the colloquial story is that these were rarely used. In fact, you can get an idea that 1,500 of these went to West Point. West Point graduated something like 50 officers a year at this time period. There was no need for this many of the things. So it was probably a make-work project where they were made at Watervliet Arsenal. But they didn't seem to get used much. The ones that survive, the sockets that survive today, are usually in pretty darn good condition. The story is that like 500 of them at one point were sold off as surplus, which in theory would have been what was still around and hadn't been broken by that point. Something new had been adopted. They were sold as surplus, purchased by Bannerman. Of course, Bannerman was the surplus empire during the 1800s and early 1900s. The story is that a whole barrel of these things, like 500 of them at Bannerman's, rats got into the barrel of fencing bayonets and ate all of the baleen, resulting in only sockets surviving. Now, like I said, there's no documentation of this story, but it all kind of does ring true, and it fits the known circumstances of surviving examples of these things. So whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it fits, it would make sense. And these are ridiculously rare to find today in intact condition like this. So big thanks to the anonymous collector who let me borrow this one to film. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.